well. And to the witnesses here for coming to testify today, thank you for your time and your knowledge. I got a question just to begin to Mr. Woolf. You cite in the testimony that you written testimony that you provided that wind energy for the first time became the #1 source of new U.S. electric generating capacity, providing 42% of all new generating capacity. I come from a state and represent a district that has has a long history of investments in innovation and has made a decision to try to be on the forefront of emerging clean energy technology, most notably wind energy in particular. One of the questions that comes up with that is whether the development of offshore wind farms, both nearshore and for some further distances offshore. And I was wondering if, in your opinion, if our country actually has the expertise, the resources in the workforce, the infrastructure to compete in that industry. And the reason why I ask is there's a local project in Massachusetts, a wind project, Cape Wind, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and a project that I actually support. The developer just this week indicated that he was going to be shifting some of those the manufacturing jobs to an overseas manufacturer because we didn't have the capacity here in the United States to actually build the steel foundations necessary for the construction of those turbines. And I just wanted to get your opinion as to the state of the industry surrounding some of these production issues and what it would take in order to get competitive if we aren't already.
Thank you for your question, and I think it gets to the heart of what this committee is looking at, is what kind of energy future do we want, where do we want to be in 30, 40 years? Because the investment decisions we're making today are going to be the plants that are operating in 30, 40 years. As I listen to Ms. Hutzler's data, it strikes me as not at all surprising that we'd be investing in innovation, in technologies where we don't yet have significant production, rather than the mature technologies they're already producing. I would not expect a correlation between where our investment dollars for innovation go and where the existing production goes. I think if this nation begins to invest in offshore wind technologies, we would be building the supply chain for offshore wind so that we can manufacture it in the United States. I note that for land-based wind technology, 10, 20 years ago, much of it was based offshore. Now, more than 75% of it has become onshore U.S. manufacturing, just like car manufacturing, as we've built the capacity here. For the first wind project offshore, I'm not at all surprised, since we're so far behind the rest of the globe, that the U.S. companies are not competitive. As Cape Wind goes forward, as Governor O'Malley goes forward in Maryland, I think we'll be building that U.S. capacity.
I'd just like to comment on the offshore wind subject. It turns out, if you take a look at EIA's numbers, that on a kilowatt-hour basis, that offshore wind is more than 2.5 times the cost of onshore wind. In the state of Massachusetts for Cape Wind, they said that they would have to start at 18 cents per kilowatt-hour for Cape Wind and then increase that cost 3% a year. The average cost of electricity in this nation is only 10 cents per kilowatt-hour. You take a lot of the European countries that have offshore projects, a number of them are in fuel poverty. I think about 18% of the United Kingdom is in fuel poverty, and that definition is that more than 10% of their income is being spent on residential energy. So I think we need to look carefully at these projects.
And ma'am, does your characterization of the cost of Cape Wind are obviously well known and well debated in Massachusetts. One of the issues with wind farms, as I've come to understand anyway, is part of the upkeep and maintenance of particularly the Cape Wind project that is actually built in shallow waters, is that over time that cost comes down because you're just paying the upkeep, and in fact the wind is free. So I appreciate it, and I yield back the balance.
But I think there's an issue here, too, that we're not that familiar with the maintenance costs to really know that. I mean, those are pretty much guesses, and once the technology's been around, even in European countries, we'll find out more about it.
And Mr. Woolf, would you like to comment on that?
Sure. Offshore wind has been used in Europe for many decades now, so I think we've got a pretty good sense of what it takes.